Welcome back to Focus Unleashed. Back for another episode. Today, we're going to be extending what we were talking about last week. So, this whole month of June is really about capturing the transformation, capturing the identity shift, capturing what has gotten you to this point. Like I've said many, many times, this is a system. And if you follow the system, at this point, we should be celebrating you either getting really close to your goal or accomplishing your goal. Maybe not the overall goal, but the first phases of it or the initial goal you have for the year. That's currently where I'm at. And so this month is very, very important because we need to acknowledge what has got us here. It's a huge shift in habits, huge shift in discipline, a huge shift in consistency. And we need to celebrate that, acknowledge it, so that we can build onto it. There's a moment in every transformation where the work you've been doing quietly starts showing up loudly. It's not dramatic. It's not a big breakthrough, but in small, subtle, undeniable ways, you carry yourself differently. This episode is about learning to see those signs, acknowledge them, and own them. Because episode 22 was documenting the alignment. That's capturing the internal shift. This episode is about recognizing the external shift, seeing the identity you've built show up in real time. So today we're going to talk about what we have been working towards. This episode is all about recognizing the external shift. And that shows up when we acknowledge the shifts that we see not only internally, but externally. So sit back, relax, as we get ready to jump into this episode. All right, let's jump right into it. Showing the signs of the shift. Why this episode matters is because you've already done the hard part. You built the discipline. You created the consistency. You stayed focused long enough to hit your first goal or very, very close to it. And like I've shared in my own journey, after I hit the first goal, I felt kind of lost. Not going to lie. Not because I was off track, but because the system had become part of me. Something that I had to force in the beginning is now just who I am. And so without forcing it and without sticking to the schedule that I set for myself in January, following it, it's just becoming natural. And without having to do that, I'm still accomplishing things, but it just felt kind of lost because I didn't have to follow the plan. The habits that used to require force were now automatic. The discipline that used to feel heavy now felt natural. The routine felt repetitive, not because I wasn't progressing, but because I had shifted. So it wasn't so much of a struggle. I didn't have to force myself to do anything. And I still don't. I'm talking about this like it's in the past, but I don't have to force myself to do anything. I do it when I say I'm going to do it, which is something that I've always struggled with. I've always said, oh, I'll do it later. And now I am the type of person that if I say I'm going to do it, I do it. As soon as possible, get it done. No more letting it linger and hang around. So it's very important to acknowledge this shift. And this episode is about helping you see the same truth in yourself. So let's think about some signs of the shift. Signs of the shift are the visible evidence that your identity has evolved. They sound like this. See if this sounds familiar. I don't have to hype myself up anymore. This used to drain me. Now it's normal. I don't negotiate with myself like I used to. I make decisions faster. I don't fall off the same way I used to. I don't need motivation. I just do it. I used to have to force myself to do almost everything in my life because I worked, and that extra energy that required that was required to achieve things beyond what I was doing on a daily basis, I didn't want to put the energy into it. I would rather spend that time relaxing or vegging out or decompressing, as I used to call it. And so now that I have transitioned into this new identity, decisions that I'm making are faster. I don't fall off like I used to. There are days when I do shut down and say, hey, it's time for a break. But that used to be when things got hard. Now it's just because, hey, I've gone extremely, extremely hard for the past 6 weeks. Take a day, take a breath, jump back into it tomorrow. And then I'm right back into it. I don't need motivation. I just do what I say that I'm going to do. These are not small things. These are identity markers. They are proof that the internal alignment you've documented last week is now showing up externally. So like I said, this episode is an extension of the last episode, and I think this whole month is just going to be one big episode broken up into sections, because this is the month that we celebrate how far we've come. So last episode, we kind of taught ourselves to capture the internal alignment, the habits, the ease, the flow, the discipline forming beneath the surface. This episode is going to teach us to acknowledge the external transformation, the way your identity is now visible in your actions. Think about what I'm going to say next, and you will see why this episode is an extension, but is very, very different when we're talking about acknowledging the shifts. Last episode was focused on I feel different. This episode, I act different. Last episode, my habits are changing. This episode's focus, my results are changing. Last episode, I'm documenting the alignment. This episode, I'm showing the signs of the shift. This episode is the bridge between who you were and who you are now. And I think that is something that I really never acknowledged. I've always seen either the internal shift or the external shift, but I never put them together. And the best way that I can kind of describe that is, as a personal trainer, I take great pride in the way that I look. So when I judge myself after a program, after finishing program, it's always comparing pictures. How do I look? The external shift. But during that process, there was a huge internal shift, mindset, accountability, discipline, focus that I never acknowledged. So focusing just on the physical transformation, I neglected the internal transformation, which would in turn, I got really comfortable with the outside external transformation. And during that comfort and not really focusing on the internal transformation, there would be a few months where I would just let myself go, and then I would have to work really, really hard to gain that internal shift back and get back on track so that my external shift would then go back to what it was. So these episodes go hand in hand. And that's why I broke them up. Because you have to acknowledge both. There's growth in everything that we do. And if we don't acknowledge every aspect of the growth, we often start to fall back into old patterns, and we don't understand why. So it's very, very important to acknowledge the shift. If you don't acknowledge the shift, you'll miss the fact that you're already operating at a higher level. Acknowledgement does three things. It reinforces the identity, because when you see the signs, you stop questioning whether you're progressing. You start owning who you've become. It builds your confidence. Confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from evidence. And the signs are the evidence. It prepares you for the next phase. You can't build the next level from the old identity. You build it from the identity you have now. So acknowledgement locks in the identity in place. And the best way that I can describe that is, I have a client. She works in a very competitive industry. And there was a time last year that they were on fire, winning contract after contract after contract. With this new year, inflation, they haven't won as many contracts. And sitting there listening to her talk, I always wondered, did they sit down and really acknowledge the shift in the group's dynamic? Did they acknowledge the shift in how they pitched for a contract? Did they acknowledge the experience that they gained? All those things are very, very important. We get so caught up in just seeing progress and seeing change that we forget to acknowledge what got us here. And then when things start to fall apart, without that acknowledgement, you wonder why, what's going on, what's different. You would know what was different if you would acknowledge it. And through acknowledgement, you kind of remind yourself on a daily basis who you are now, so that you never forget. So when you feel like things aren't going your way, you just jump back on track. Your new identity takes over and you get back on track and you move forward. Acknowledgement is always going to advance you forward because it reminds you that you have grown. It gives you the confidence to work towards an even improved identity. And you understand what got you to this point. So, what do you look for in your own life? Here are the signs you're shifting. You don't argue with your goals anymore. You don't need reminders to stay disciplined. You're more patient with the process. You're less reactive and more intentional. You're consistent without thinking about it. You're not impressed by your old excuses. You're not intimidated by your new standards. These are not coincidences. These are not good days. These are identity upgrades. And that is kind of why I think I felt lost after accomplishing the first goal, was because I was very different. Even my thought process after I accomplished the goal, it was excitement, but it was excitement about the opportunities that now were going to be open to me that I could go and achieve. I did celebrate the fact that I achieved my first goal, but it wasn't stuck in the celebrating the success. My mindset was in celebrating the opportunities that were going to come. And that's how I knew that there was a shift in my identity, but it also left me kind of lost because I've never been at this point as far as an identity shift. I've never had this before. So it was new to me, and understanding that my mindset was different and that it wasn't a matter of if I was going to accomplish all the goals that I set for myself this year. It's a matter of when I accomplish them. It's almost like an out of body experience. You feel it, but it's new. So that shift is the proof you're ready for the next level. This is a moment where you stop trying to become the person you want to be and realize you already are. This is the moment where the system stops being something you do and becomes something you are. This is the moment where you stop chasing progress and start recognizing the progress that's been chasing you. The shift is the proof. The signs are the evidence. And acknowledging them is how you step into the next phase with confidence. So when you think about accomplishing your goals, you know that there's still more to come, and things will start to slow down a little bit because with every new goal there is a fresh start. Accomplish this goal, now it's on to the next one. It's a fresh start. But I know that I'm not stuck because I've shifted. And you're going to be in the same spot. Think about it. You've built the discipline. You've built the consistency. You've built the alignment. Now it's time to see the shift. acknowledge it, and own it. Because the signs aren't subtle, they're significant. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. I want you to really think about what we talked about in this episode because it's extremely important. The last episode, this episode, the rest of this month is really important part of you going to the next level. Going without identifying the internal and external shift and understanding how you got here will lead you to being confused and create doubt and uncertainty because we often get too far ahead of ourselves and we forget to stop just for a second and think about how we got here and how we're going to use how we got here to keep moving forward. This seems very insignificant, but I assure you, through experience, that this is extremely important for your growth because celebrating who you have become is the next step in you becoming everything that you want to be. This is Focused Unleashed. And this is how you show the signs of the shift. As always, stay focused and be ready to unleash it.